Good evening. This is my top 10 instrumental tunes. They're not songs because there's no singing on them, of classic rock from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and whatever. Might be more than 10. We'll just have to see. It might be 15. Don't know. See how many I come to before I call it quits. So the first one is Spring Water, a tune called I Will Return, and it was released in 1971, and it reached number 5 in the UK charts, and it did very well in most other European countries. Until I started checking this out, I thought it was actually a band called Spring Water, but actually it was this fella here named Phil Cordell, and he's a multi-instrumentalist. He plays keyboards, guitar, bass, drums, and sadly he has died. He was 59 when he died in 2007. Absolutely brilliant instrumental. Not surprisingly, it went to number 5, as I say, in the UK charts, which was unusual for an instrumental. I forgot to say that these 10 or 15 choices, they're not in any particular order. This is The Nice, featuring Keith Emerson, who went on to play in so many other different bands. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, for one, associated with P.P. Arnold and so many other musicians. And here they are playing their rendition of the Brandenburg Concerto number 3. So they have a sort of a different take on it. The Nice were what you might call a progressive rock band, and they were pioneers of progressive rock. This was released in 1968, and it's absolutely amazing. Emerson plays a Hammond 100 organ, and there's no other sound like it. Keith Emerson died aged 71 by his own hand in 2016. Now here's a quiz for you. Do you know who this guy is? I'll give you a second or two to think of this. This is George Martin, who produced all the Beatles' studio albums at Abbey Road. He's a classically trained musician himself, an extremely clever guy. And my next choice is one of his. Northern Songs were approached to try and ask Paul McCartney if he was interested in composing an opening theme music for Radio 1 and Radio 2, and Paul McCartney turned it down, but George Martin was approached instead, and George Martin rose to the task and came up with Theme 1, which started off every morning, Radio 1 and Radio 2, between the years 1967 and 1975 or so. This guy was just amazing. George Martin outlived 2 of the Beatles and lived to the ripe old age of 90. He died in 2016. This is Apache, an instrumental by The Shadows. It was written by a guy called Jerry Loudon, and he first offered it to Bert Weedon. You remember Bert Weedon? Brilliant guitarist, but Loudon didn't like Bert Whedon's version of it. So he gave it to the Shadows, and it topped the charts, UK charts, in 1960 for 5 weeks. It's one of their major hits. And this is the Shadows lineup from 1961. And they did have a few changes of personnel, and they're appearing on Cracker Jack 1961, and they're playing FBI here. Brilliant instrumentalists. And I'm going to cheat a wee bit with this next one, because technically it isn't really an instrumental. There is a line or two in it, that are a spoken line in it. But this is Gary Moore, who died aged 58 in Estepona in 2011. That's Estepona in Spain. He was 58, and he was born in Belfast boy. He was born, I believe, opposite Stormont. I think it's Castle Hill, and I've done a video on his birthplace, and his memorabilia, his rock memorabilia, are in the OYE Centre down in Gordon Street in central Belfast. Get to visit that sometime, because there's a lot of other rock memorabilia from other artists down there too. And this is his tune, Parisian Walkways, and it's absolutely fabulous. Released in 1979, and it made number 8 in the UK charts. It was written jointly by Moore and Phil Lynott, a fellow member of Thin Lizzy. Well, Moore had left Thin Lizzy by this stage, but they were both in Thin Lizzy. And Lynott did the original vocal contribution to the song. Just a sad loss to the Northern Ireland music scene and beyond. And folks are trying to get a statue to erected in Belfast somewhere to Gary Moore, because he was one of the top guitarists in the world for a number of years. He's at least in the top 5 in the world. But Belfast City Council, they're very short of money. They were short of money for the George Best statue as well. Didn't give a penny for it, I believe. Anyway, that's my choice, and it's a wee bit of a cheat, but I can be allowed to cheat sometimes, whenever it's to remember such a great talent, and a great Belfast talent at that. These are the Tornadoes from England. They played instrumentals by and large, and this is their tune called Telstar, and it reached number 1 in the US Billboard 100, and it reached number 1 in the UK charts. So it's really the first sci-fi rock tune. It was written by a guy called Joe Meek, and the name Telstar was named after the recently launched Telstar communications satellite. Brilliant tune. Excellent. Telstar by the Tornadoes. And there they are. Their names, the name of the band up in lights there. I wonder, can you guess what the next tune I'm going to give you from this actor here? This is Don Johnson, and I'll try and get a shot of his partner in Miami Vice. He played Crockett, James Sonny Crockett, and the next tune is Crockett's theme. Yes, this is Crockett's partner, his undercover partner. This is Philip Michael Thomas, the actor, and he plays Ricardo or Rico Tubbs, and they're, as I say, undercover cops working in Miami, and they are cool dudes, they are stylish dudes, and they set the fashion trends in men's fashion right throughout the 80s and 90s, because the series ran from 1984 through to 1990 and left an indelible mark. Funny enough, the tune Crockett's Theme by Jan Hammer, it was written in 1984 but only released in 1987. It didn't make the American charts at all, but was very big and well received in most European countries. Got to number 2 in Ireland, number 2 in the UK, and number 1 elsewhere. So this is Jan Hammer, who wrote the Miami Vice theme, Crockett's Theme. This is Popcorn, and I'll give the credit here to a band called Hot Butter. Know nothing about them, but it was released in 1972, and it's an early example of synth pop, and it's a very, very catchy wee tune. Did well in the charts. And it's absolutely no marks for working this one out. This is Tubular Bells by Mike Oldfield. He was 19 at the time whenever this was released in 1973. It was his debut album. He plays all the instruments and builds up from starting off with just the one instrument. He adds, I don't know, a dozen other ones that he plays all by himself, and builds up to the massive sound that we have about 2/3 the way through. It's not really a song, it's a complete album, but it stayed in the UK charts for the entire year of 1974. And reached number 1, of course. It reached number 3 in the USA charts, and it was used as the intro theme for The Exorcist. It sold nearly 3 million copies in UK alone, and 15 million at least worldwide. So it brought in a few bob for Mike Oldfield. Aficionados of rock music will know who this band is. Who is it? This is a Focus from the Netherlands, and this is them playing their song, well, their tune, Hocus Pocus, released in 1973, went immediately up into the UK charts and hit number 20. The tune had been played previously on the Old Grey Whistle Test by whispering Bob Harris. Talk very quietly like that, Bob Harris. My next choice comes from Booker T and the MGs. I was sort of torn between choosing Time Is Tight or Green Onions. Green Onions was released in 1962 and was probably their biggest hit. And Time Is Tight was released in 1969 when they had a few personnel changes. I actually would go for Time Is Tight, prefer it, even though it wasn't their greatest hit by sales. Booker T and the MGs broke the mould in many senses. They were one of the first ever racially integrated groups. There was 2 black guys and 2 white guys in the band, and this was at a time when soul music and R&B and funk was generally considered the the preserve of black culture. The band, right from the early 60s and before, played backing for so many different artists like Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett, Sam and Dave, Rufus Thomas, and many, many other ones. So they were well established. So this is my choice. Time is Tight by Booker T and the MGs, American band. This is the guitar maestro genius of Mason Williams. He is an American guy, lives in Oregon. He's 82, he's born in 1938. And, you know, he has encompassed everything in his life on the artistic side. A musician, composer, songwriter, writer, poet, photographer, stand-up comedian. You know, this guy has so many strings to his bow. And in 1968 he released Classical Gas, and it had an amazing reception. It's backed by a big orchestra, and the sound is superb. It won 3 Grammys in the single year: Best Instrumental Composition, Best Performance, and Best Orchestral Arrangement. Absolutely super. This is Johnny and the Hurricanes. This is Red River Rock, dating from 1959. And the Hurricanes were from Toledo in Ohio. They specialised in rock and roll instrumentals, and they were popular on both sides of the Atlantic. In fact, they played in Hamburg much the same time as the Beatles, only Johnny and the Hurricanes were top of the bill when the Beatles were just virtual nobodies. They specialised in adapting traditional pop melodies and giving them a modern rock slant. And this was very true of Red River Rock. My next choice is the Surfaris from the west coast of America, Surf Boys. And this is their instrumental called Wipeout. And do you remember the manic laugh at the beginning of the record, and the supposed breaking of the surfboard? These were very young lads. The Bob Berryhill was only about 15 whenever this record was put together. He's now 73. He's still playing with the rest of his family in the band. He tells that the Wipeout composition was put together in a matter of 10-15 minutes. It was just to fill in a B-side, but it fell into the right hands. It was passed from one to the other, to DJ, to this one, to that one, to record producer. And very, very quickly it hit the top spot in 1963, number 1. The boys were a quartet at the time of writing, and they all contributed to it, but the energetic drum solo by drummer Rowan Wilson, was a marked feature of the song, or not the song, the tune. It sold 1 million copies. That's just another one of my top choices of instrumental music from the 60s onwards. I'll give you a few seconds to guess or work out the name of the band and the name of the instrumental that I'm going to talk about now. This is, of course, Albatross from Fleetwood Mac. And this is their original lineup. Changed quite a bit over the years, and their early songs, are totally different from their later material. That's not to say that both have their place. It was the instrumental Albatross was composed by Peter Green, who left the band, I don't know, about 1970 or so. The instrumental is a relaxing, very relaxing, drift away type song. It's a dreamy sound. It's almost euphoric. It's in a C setting. It's the cymbals resemble waves, and it has been Fleetwood Mac's only #1 UK hit. It was released in January 1969. This is the single Groovin' with Mr. Blow, and it was released in 1970, and it reached #2 in the UK charts. Can't tell you an awful lot about this. Mr. Blow was the collective name given to a group of backing musicians who played on the actual song. One of them was in Elton John's backing band. Great wee tune. This is Cozy Pal and his instrumental called Dance with the Devil. Reached #3 in the UK charts 1974, and Cozy Pal was just an amazing drummer. He was so well respected. He played on so many different people's albums. It is believed he's played on nearly 70 albums by different artists and bands. We're talking about people like Jeff Beck. We're talking about Rainbow, Gary Moore, Robert Powell, Whitesnake, Black Sabbath, Emerson, Lake and Palmer, as well as playing in his own bands. He was just an amazing boyo on the drums. The bass player on this track, Dancing with the Devil, was none other than Suzi Quatro. He certainly was dancing with the devil on the day that he died. He was driving his Saab motor on the M4, Saab 9000, and it is believed that he crashed at 104 miles per hour. It was bad weather. He had no seatbelt on, and it was believed that he had a slow puncture as well. So I'm afraid he was dancing with the devil there. His life ended aged 50. Big loss to the world of music. Cozy Pal, Dance with the Devil. Brilliant track.